The meeting will come to order at this time. Call the roll. Just punch the green. Slowly coming to life. Slowly coming to life. Yeah.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we will proceed now. First, we're going to have Senator DeStefano, he used to be delegate, has a bill to present, and then we'll move on to the Secretary of Finance. So.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much for hearing us this morning. Senate Bill 1008, it's the local option for the grocery tax, and there was a fiscal impact on it unless we delayed the effective date or enactment date until January 1st, 2024. So we have a substitute that does that. I'm sorry, a line amendment that does that. So I'd like to move the line amendment.
All right, does anybody want to make a motion to adopt the line amendment?
Move the line amendment.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. All that amendment is adopted. Proceed.
And we don't need speakers on this, but I'll unless you want them.
No.
But it's a very simple bill. It's if the locality wants to do this, it's up to the locality. It's local option, and there is no fiscal impact if it comes online after January 1st, 2024. And I'm happy to answer any questions on this. It's an exemption for the grocery tax.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any discussion or questions with this issue? Senator Peterson.
Yeah, let me just make sure I understand this. So this is a bill that would give localities the ability to repeal their what I already understood was their local option penny on groceries right now.
Mr. Chair, yeah. Senator Peterson, that's absolutely correct. Line 22, 23, 24 talk about the exemption allowing the localities to just exempt their penny on the grocery tax.
Further question.
Yes, sir.
I pride myself on being an institutional memory, but this predates even me, and maybe Sasslaw is going to have to correct me. Hasn't it always been optional, or wasn't it originally optional to have the local sales tax? It was not optional.
No.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
what this does, localities have the ability to enact the tax. This allows them to exempt certain items from the tax. Is that it?
It's the grocery share.
Mr. Chair, it's groceries and other products.
Right.
So other feminine products, other hygiene products. So yes, sir, that's correct.
The hygiene products are actually not taxed now. I mean, it will not. And then.
Correct, but I believe we, so on line 111, they refer to it as food, purchased for human consumption and essential personal hygiene products, as such terms are defined in 58.1.611.1.
Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to make it clear, we're not talking about being able to choose between these different items. It's either either do it or you don't.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Mr. Chair, Senator Morrison, that is 100% correct. It's either you do it or you don't. It's local option only, so it's up to the locality. And the effective date doesn't go into effect. You cannot put this into effect until January 1st, 2024, which ensures there's no financial impact.
Say that again.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Saslaw, so there was a fiscal impact on this to the Commonwealth. They had to spend roughly $500,000 to do the systems. If we enacted this right away, they said if we enact it after January 1st or on January 1st, 2024, it's part of their upgrade, so there would be no associated cost with that. So there's zero fiscal impact on the Commonwealth if that's done. Now with the localities, if we're allowing them to exempt a tax, there is a fiscal impact on the locality, but it's prescriptive. So they can say, yes, I want it, or no, I do not want it. So it's entirely in their bailiwick.
Well, did they request this bill?
Yes, sir. This has been requested by my city, City of Virginia
Okay.
Beach.
And you'll probably be back here 2026 with a budget amendment to make up for the loss. What's the projected loss in revenue?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Saslaw, I'll have to check with the city on what the city believes its projected loss is going to be on the 1% sales tax on groceries in the city.
Deborah Bryan from the City of Virginia Beach, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. It's very difficult to do, and just to clarify, right now the 1% local option is for everything. You cannot bifurcate and just take the groceries away. This would allow us to keep the 1% on everything else and then just take the groceries away. As far as the fiscal impact, at this time, my budget department tells me it's very difficult to figure that out for the City of Virginia Beach because they're all put together now. They're not bifurcated. So it would be something that they'd have to work on. But again, it's just permissive, not.
Well, I mean, do they, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Senator Saslaw.
do they have any idea as to, what are they getting from it now?
I don't have that number with me.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Senator McClellan.
this might be more a question for council, but once they remove the sales tax on groceries and personal hygiene products, if at a later date they decide they want to reinstate it, would they have that authority?
Mr. Chair, Senator McClellan, yes, they would, by ordinance.
Thank you.
Could you repeat that?
Yes, they would have the authority to not exempt it in the future and repeal the exemption that they instated.
And Mr. Chairman, Senator Saslaw, to be directly to answer your question, if the city said, hey, we want to do this starting January 1st, 2024, then they decided in January 1st, 2025, it was too much money, they can actually do a local ordinance, repeal their decision. They don't need to come back to the General Assembly for anything.
I understand that, but are we talking in the millions?
Of course.
I would assume in the City of Virginia Beach, that would, 1% of grocery tax is probably in the millions of dollars. I'm sorry, my city specialist, my city attorney here told me it's between 12 and 14 million dollars.
12 and 14 million.
Yeah.
And in the City of Virginia Beach,
Would you
that's
vote
referred to as-
against, if they came in here for an appropriation to make up for that difference, would you vote against it?
Yes, sir, absolutely, because in the City of Virginia Beach with their budget, in my opinion, 12 to 14 million dollars is referred to as budget dust.
Okay,
Senator Peterson.
Yeah, I mean, here's my problem with this bill, and that is every locality is expected to have a certain amount of revenue effort, particularly to fund public schools. And if they don't put up a certain amount of effort, then they're basically relying on the rest of the state to make that up. And, public schooling is a constitutional obligation. And my concern is that if you're gonna take a fairly large portion, 12 to 14 million is a lot of money. I was in local government, that's a lot of money. I don't care how big your city is. So I'm concerned that this would be, it's an easy vote to take, but then you're gonna be looking to the state to make up that money, and that's where my concern is.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Peterson, I do not
Barker,
believe that the city of
George.
Virginia Beach is gonna look for us to make up the difference in that 12 to $14 million that they're receiving on that. And with the billion plus that they spend on schools every year, I think that, again, this is prescriptive. They can do it if they want to. They don't have to do it. This was in my city's legislative agenda package. I said I'd be happy to carry it. It's up to them if they want to do it. As we all know, city councils change frequently. This past election, we had 5 new council members. They may decide that this isn't the best option for them or the best direction. If down the road, the next city council wants to do it or doesn't want to do it, I think it's good to give it to them as their option to do.
This is,
right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this
Senator
is just
Passoff.
one more issue where you're gonna have somebody campaign and say, we need to get rid of all taxes, including this. And trust me, their legislators will be back in trying to do just that. We need to pass this bill by indefinitely.
All right, Tyler, did you have information to share?
Yes, Senator Barker, taxes indicated that it's about $275 million for all localities, the 1% tax on food for human consumption and essential personal hygiene products.
All right, Senator Howell.
Mr. Chairman, my concern is slightly different than what I've heard from others, and that is when we put the delayed enactment on it, we took out of the hands of our successors the decision on this. And I think especially in an election year when there will be churning, I think that it's really a bad time to be going this direction. Thank you. And if there's nobody else, I'd move to PBI.
All right, we have a motion to pass by indefinitely. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, before we do that.
Yes. Okay, we can have the motion in the second, but then you get to discuss.
Yes, sir.
So Senator Newman.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I'm a little disappointed, honestly. We all agreed that the grocery tax was bad and regressive, and it was hard to pay for, right? Because it affected schools, and we kind of worked together, we fixed that. Now we have a locality saying, you know, it's bad and regressive, and we want to fix it by using our own money. There's not one item in here that says that they would ever come back. And could you imagine them coming back? There's no way we would do it. We would say they stood there and said, we want to reduce our own taxes on a regressive item that makes people pay taxes on the essentials. And so, to me, I don't know what, is going on under the surface here. But I think this is an abundantly reasonable request. Virginia Beach says, hey, y'all couldn't do it, get it. We're willing to do it. We're going to pay for it ourselves. And so that's why I'm going to vote in favor of it.
All right, if there's no further discussion, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have another issue I guess I'd like to bring up at this time. And I have a question for you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair. We have a Revenue Resource Committee. The only problem I would have with this, I want to vote for the bill, but is I like to maintain uniformity throughout the state. Our goal should be to eliminate all sales tax on food. If this bill were put in that resource committee, at least when you're doing the broader look, if you're going to do that, if you're going to look at other tax bills this year, because one of the concerns that I would have if we don't do it comprehensively, and this could be a vehicle to do that, if we replace that money, but we got to recognize we got to replace over $100 million to do it.
Yeah.
Is that, like, I have a son who lives East Beach, Norfolk. Well, Virginia Beach can do this. Norfolk is probably a little more fiscally stressed. So my son, when they advertise you only pay sales tax half a mile down the road, he just might go down there and buy his groceries. That's why I like uniformity, so you don't have that competition between the more affluent, if I could call Virginia Beach more affluent than Norfolk, maybe someone would differ with that, but that's the issue that I would have. But I would like for the bill to be retained, at least in the bosom of the committee, if you're going to be looking at a more comprehensive measure that this could be a part of.
All right. We certainly could do that.
Okay, well, I would move an alternative motion that we pass the bill by for the day and refer it to the Resource Committee.
Move the previous question.
All right. The previous question is before us, and that's not debatable. And that will bring us back to Senator Howell's a motion that she made. Do we need to do we need to recorded vote on the previous question?
Chair, members of the committee, thank you very much. Have a great day. Appreciate
right.
your time.
No, that was just a previous question, so now we have to
I'm sorry.
vote on it. Just put it on the table. Don't
Look
leave
carried
yet.
away.
You're going to get Peter's
All right.
vote this time.
Yeah. All right, the motion is to pass the bill by indefinitely. We have another problem, so.
What's the problem?
Check.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you guys so much for your time this morning.
Certainly.
Appreciate it.
All right, and then we're gonna do Senator Suderline now, since it's a similar bill here, and then we'll get to Secretary of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Chairman. It's the first time since the change, so good to be here. I have Senate Bill 850 for your consideration. It very much is in line with Senator Hanger's request on uniformity. What it seeks to do is complete the job of repealing the grocery tax, and it then backfills all the localities. So Senator Saslaw would not have to worry about what would happen in the future. It's all spelled out right there for you. It would remove one of the most regressive taxes that we have in the Commonwealth, one that we all thought was so regressive that we removed part of it, and that several members of this body campaigned on removing all of it several years ago. Thankfully, we were able to work with the administration last year to repeal the state portion. I think we should repeal the local portion as well. I don't understand why it makes sense that groceries be taxed at the local level but not the state level. Given our current changes with the amount of income tax revenue and sales tax revenue more broadly, I think now is the right time to make an adjustment in the way that we do this. And the bill provides for the backfill of every locality. And I would direct everyone's attention to the fiscal impact statement, which the Department of Tax made very clear how much the transfer would be from the Commonwealth to the localities in the same way that we do for sales tax now.
All right, is there any discussion or questions? All right, does anyone want to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
So,
Senator Peterson.
Senator, as I read the bill, you're striking the local penny that goes to local governments. How are we replacing that money?
It is a direct backfill. If you look at the fiscal impact statement, it says that it's based on the distribution of what's currently generated, and it would be $263 million in 2024, $299 in 25, and climbs about $7 million.
Okay.
Going forward.
Further question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Peterson.
So basically, you're going to take money from the general fund that would be otherwise allocated to other agencies, and you're going to return that to the localities.
Yes, it would take the general fund. And the reason that I think now is the time to do it is because we've had such excessive growth in both income tax collections and general sales tax collections. We've already agreed that the grocery tax is regressive, and now would be a good time to reformat that so we got rid of the regressive tax.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Senator Deeds.
this is essentially car tax too.
No, it's not, because there's a huge difference. The car tax too, in your mind, car tax went, the reason that one of my predecessors, Madison Marie from Shawsville, hated the car tax proposal was because there was different tax levels throughout. Fairfax taxed personal property at a much higher rate than Montgomery County did, or that Bath County does. And so they also had the assessed value of their car on average was so much higher. So that was a direct transfer, often from our rural, more blue-collar jurisdictions that you and I both represent, to to the chair's
Right.
districts.
Yeah.
And so I don't
That's a great
think.
idea.
Yeah,
And,
thank you, Senator Peterson.
And I spoke against the bill.
And so I don't think that that was formatted well. This, though, is the opposite because the grocery tax is much more uniform. Everyone has the exact same rate, so it has got none of those problems.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you pointing that out.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator
And
Sasslaw.
after, this got passed, trust me, they'd be back in, to have us fund their, reduction in their real estate tax. It's coming, you and I know it. We need to get rid of this stuff ASAP.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that. You may not know it, but in Roanoke County, we pay $1.09. So you are not subsidizing our real estate tax in Roanoke County.
We will be when you come in to repeal it.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Enough of that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
take
Senator-
control. Somebody take control.
Yes, that's what I was just trying to say here, so we don't need to go back and forth on this, so.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Ralph.
Senator Soderline, would this have any effect on those counties that have voted to add 1% sales tax for school construction?
It would be indifferent to that. Those folks would still get to collect their 1% in general.
Thank
The
you.
only difference, yeah.
How about the increased transient occupancy tax?
Was this part of the governor's proposal? I don't remember this.
You ready for motion?
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Senator Edwards.
You may have said this earlier. What is the fiscal impact again on, throughout the state and locally?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, what it would do is it would transfer $263 million in year one, which would be next year, then $299, and then from there, it basically is an $8 million increase according to the Department of Tax each year thereafter.
Yeah.
And that would come from general fund?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So it would be a substantial decrease in general fund dollars then that we would have available for other things, so.
Move to PBI.
All right, we have a
Second.
motion. All right, we have a motion and a second to pass by indefinitely. If there's no further discussion, we will vote on the board.
Ayes 12, noes 4.
Ayes 12, noes 4.
Thank you,
Sure.
and thank you for not making me do it twice, Senator Peterson.
That's right. All right. Now we'll move on to a presentation from Secretary of Finance Cummings. And welcome.
Thank you. Somebody help me get this presentation up. Thank you. Not my strength.
I'm taking it out. Yeah, they want it out.
Okay, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you today. And I'm here to talk about the month of December and year-to-date results. So, good news, we have 2 months of actual. As you recall, December 15th proposed budget includes through October. We now have 2 months of actual. And the very quick bottom line is we are on track with what we expected here. Some softening in certain areas, but all in all, no surprises, and we feel good about where we are. The consensus, as you know, was we were entering into a mild recession. The base case was it would start last quarter and extend and be mild and pretty quick. We actually have took that projection down. We think it is going to be later, more severe, and last a bit longer. So our view is that, yes, while inflation, we have made progress on inflation, it still is at 6.5% based upon the December numbers, not close to where the Fed wants to be. We think they will continue to rise, maybe pull back a bit, and we've yet to see some of the impact. I think today was pretty notable, Microsoft announcing 10,000 layoffs. We've had the tech folks already do that are much more cash flow negative, and so we are still remain cautious about our outlook. Before I get into this, I just want to remember with all of you the basis for the December forecast that was presented. And so this is just making sure we have context as we go forward over the next few months, that the Gaker forecast, which is what came out of the Joint Advisory Board of economists' input. We presented to the Gaker Group. You can see actually was a milder recession, looking at the top line of each of these statistics on GDP, employment, and Virginia employment. We, after listening to Gaker and some of our own views, said it's going to happen later. As I said, it's going to be harsher, and it's going to last. It's going to start beginning this quarter, but it's going to last 9 months before we get out of it. And we still feel like that's a reasonable place to be. So you can see on GDP, what happens is 2023 is a bit better because it starts later. 2024 is meaningfully worse. GDP down 50 basis points versus 30. U.S. employment going down in 24 from 1.5% down 2.4%. And Virginia employment going down 0.4% in the base case, or the Gaker case, to our 1.2% down. This is now the outcome of that, and looking at some of the trends of our major revenue contributors. And just remembering 2022 was incredibly strong, 16% overall year-over-year growth. And then what happens to the key categories here, that is withholding 4.8%, still up. Skip over non-withholding for a minute. Refunds up dramatically. That does reflect what's happened with the rebate. And then sales tax up 8%, corporate income tax down 9%, and all other up 1.6%. The most significant variable in all this, as you know, is what happens to non-withholding. It all happens in the fourth quarter, and you can see we're hitting that very hard. In fact, we received from our revenue forecasting team with our new economist a scenario that was less aggressive on the decline, and we've taken it down meaningfully more harshly, 25% in 2023, and then down 10% in 2024. And that really is the main driver of this. All of this does reflect the full policy impact in the governor's proposed budget. So those numbers are included in the revenue forecast, as you would expect, what he presented. So very quickly, and this will not be a long presentation because I think it's a pretty straightforward message, is we are year-to-date with 2 months of actual up $79 million. In the overall scheme of things, that's so tiny, we're saying we're on track. It's certainly a bit of a positive bit of news, but that doesn't really indicate something that we get excited about, frankly. First, looking at if we do adjust for all policy so we can get a sense for what's going on in the underlying comparable economic-driven data, you can see that is in the second bullet, we are up 6.5% year-to-date through December, year-over-year. Looking at some of the other revenue sources on the same basis, withholding is up 7.9%, feeling pretty strong. And if you look at sales tax, it's up 6.4%. Non-withholding is still up 13%. That's just estimated payments still. So people making their safe harbor payments, and the story will be told now beginning in March. Corporate is running low. It's down 15.7%. That's a little bit worse than we expected, but again, that's not a huge revenue source. We expected that would decline. And all other sources of revenue, as you know, that includes the big negative impact of housing. So it's recordation fees for home sales and new mortgages. But those are being more than offset with higher net interest income that we're receiving based upon rates that we're earning on our funds. If you do go down below, there are some major things that do affect the unadjusted figure. And AST was flipped, so that hit us this year in terms of growth. Also, this pass-through entity tax is an important concept to understand because that itself added $390 million of revenues. This is where pass-through entity taxpayers are able to deduct SALT. So what's happened is that everybody who is subject to that is making sure they make their state and local tax payments before December 31. So our revenues actually got bumped up by $390 million. They will take that deduction at the end of the year, so net for the year it's a zero, but it does affect our interim unadjusted figures. So unadjusted, we're up 0.8% for year to date, and 0.8% and 8% just for the month of December. This is all that in numbers. Trust me, this will coincide with what I just told you. You can see the top is unadjusted. And so December, if you go to that December clump, the percentage change, you'll see the 8% and what's driven that. And then if you go to the right, fiscal year to date, we're up 0.8%. And then all the numbers, just go to the far right. Corporate, there's no adjustments to that. All other sources, no adjustments to that. And then down below, those are all the numbers that are going to reflect what is adjusted for all the other policy things that are in this. So you get a sense of kind of economically what it's telling you for the month of December and year-to-date results. But all in all, we still stick by our view of what's going to happen the rest of the year. Our forecast is very conservative in terms of economic outlook and in particular on withholding. And we don't have a basis based upon these results and our updated view of the economy, what we're seeing out there, to have any basis to think that it will come out any differently from the projected year-end figures. This is actually looking at the actual collections. You can see in December that $39 million is what was our overage in December. Again, if you look at it in the relative to a $2.9 billion, it's not, again, not much to get excited about. And year-to-date, we're up $79 million based upon those 2 months. I want to make sure also, one thing that is different this year is we've now created monthly financials. We started doing that about a year ago, working on that. It was delivered in March. It had a lot to do with our identifying some of the unspent appropriations early on and just staying focused on that to make sure that stuff was protected. And so we have our monthly projections are now adjusted for policy changes. We've gone back 4 years, and so we're adjusting also for normal seasonality. And so we're actually getting these overages on a month-to-month basis are much more informed, and I think therefore much more realistic, as opposed to kind of the interpolated 1/12 is every month. And so I think you can rely on these a bit more than we have in the past as we start to look at February in particular, where the conversation about reforecast may come up. I also want to make sure you see that the conservatism in our numbers. This is the red line is 2022 actuals. The blue line is our forecast on a monthly basis. And so we're basically on point as of December. We believe we will be below last year, but again, because of non-withholding, the story really is going to get told in the fourth quarter. And basically all that gap on the far right side is the variance on non-withholding relative to where we were last year. Labor market is slowing, okay, this 5.5%. That negative number in December for labor, there's some variations in this, a different number of days in collections, and also standard deduction is impacting that. So, I always say we don't get too worked up about a single month, but that does have some things. This is now unadjusted, so that we can kind of tune into what the rest of the year looks like. But we're basically looking at a 4.8% is what we're expecting, and right now, year to date, we're 5.5%. So we still feel good about this. This shows you what we've built into our projection on labor trends and employment growth. And point is that to the far right, where you get into 2023 Q2, and then what we're expecting for the Q3 of 2023 is got a pretty harsh outlook on these numbers. So non-withholding, this is through December actuals, so the dark green line far to the right on all these numbers, that is year to date, is the actual through December, and to the right is what our projections are. You can see how hard we have hit those numbers on a monthly basis going through to year end, just to give you a sense and reminding us how critically important it is on this number. We've said it since a year ago. This is going to be the determinant about how we do. And frankly, it's why our projections are what they are. And it is also why in our budgeting, we built in the accordion, because we feel we've been conservative, but there's no real model for this. This just explains pass-through entity tax again, so I think I covered that adequately. It's a lot of words, but it's not that complicated when you understand what people are having to do to get the deduction we all wish we could get. And then refunds, again, this is what we expect on for the tax rebate. You can see what happened. Interestingly, the budget was 106 and change for the full tax rebate. 1048 has actually been cashed in. So pretty small amount that's still floating out there somewhere or yet to find an owner. But I think we're pretty well done in getting that out to everybody. I know we have a lot of happy people who got those checks. And then you can see again on refunds, we've got a good estimate for that, but that also is a number that could have some variability in it, more than some of the other figures we've seen. Sales tax, we feel good about this. We're looking at the full year, 8.1%. We're at 13.2 year to date. You know, we're right now waiting in 2 days. We'll see the full outcome of holiday shopping. I think to date, some of the early signals are it has been a little bit soft, but we don't have the full story on that. But we still feel solid on the outlook for full year sales. Corporate profits, you know, are under pressure. That message is, and actually we're in corporate earnings season right now. The banks are really the big sector that's already reported. Banks are not a good indicator of the rest of the economy, given a lot of variability in their earnings, sales and trading in particular. So we do expect to see more softness here as things flow through the economy. And then the housing market obviously has been impacted, and we feel that in our recordation fees. The other sources, corporate, I've covered this. It's down 15%, 16% year to date. Recordation is down 32% year to date. Other revenues, we have the offsetting given the higher interest income. And you can see that next to last bullet, just an indicator. We have a full year forecast for interest income of $223 million. We've already collected 174, so we do believe that we're going to exceed that, given the rates are still a bit higher than we had expected that they might be. Bottom line is we're on track. There's no reason for us to have a sense to change our forecast. You know, we'll be talking about it as we do our February revenue report. My guess is right now, given where we stand and the uncertainty of the fourth quarter, that I wouldn't honestly be expecting that we'd be doing a revenue reforecast in February unless something really dramatic changes in the world, because I think we still have to wait to see what happens. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
All right. I have just one quick comment there. I think these numbers look particularly good when you compare them to what the cost of living situation has been. And you talked about it as a 6.5%. Through the entire calendar year, but in reality, it's been two different worlds. The first 6 months of the year, we were 6.3 to 6.4% up in terms of CPIU and those types of things. And in the last 6 months, from July through December, there was basically no inflation, and the total was 0.1%.
No, incremental, right?
At the national level. Yeah. So for us to be able to continue the type of growth we've had over the last several years in this environment, where this fiscal year, the first 6 months of it has been basically a 0% inflation.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of people would say if you just put your blinders on and just looked at year-to-date, say, right, you know, what's everybody so worried about? I think we all still recognize that the Fed has not stopped, and we just need to be cautious. Yeah. That's certainly our position.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Comments? Yes, Senator Ruff.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, looking into the future, at the retreat, the presentation was that Virginia's population growth has slowed more than it might have been expected in the last couple of years. How will or has this affected how you anticipate revenue in the coming future?
Thank you. Yes, we're still growing. We're growing about 6%. We have, as you probably heard our presentation, is that over the last 9 years, while we've had net negative domestic migration, we've had overall, thanks really because of international migration, we've had growth of about 6%, which would be just below national average, but about 50% of what our competitor states are that we use as our group. If you look at the fiscal impact of that, the people who have left, we have lost the adjusted gross income of taxpayers, which over that time is about 87,000 taxpayers. We've lost $9 billion of adjusted gross income in that time frame. Comparing to our competitor states, the state that we look at in particular is North Carolina, and they've picked up $18 billion of adjusted gross income over that time
Mr. Chairman?
frame.
Yes, Senator Sasslaw.
Just a couple of observations.
Sure.
2021 median income in North Carolina was $62,000 a family. Ours was $80,000. With respect to population and what we're losing, I've talked with the Northern Virginia municipalities, and they're saying that everywhere you look, high-rises, which the immigrants don't move into, are springing up everywhere. And according to the Census Bureau, Virginia, from April 1st of 2010, when our population was 8,001,000, the same date 10 years later was 8,631,000. And I talked to them, and they said they don't know where the hell this information is coming from that we lost population, because we have not lost population, and the people that are moving in here are high-income earners.
Mr. Chairman?
Otherwise, they couldn't afford those high-rises at Tyson's Corner, you know, where, and all over Northern Virginia, where 2 bedrooms and 2 baths go for over $2 million.
Mr. Chairman?
Secretary
Sasslaw, thank you.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. All of our data that we've used, and my guess is you've seen the other presentation, it's 100% U.S. Census data. It's on a consistent time frame of 2013 to 2022, which is 2013. The magic is that's when we first went to net negative domestic migration. And actually, what we've said, I just said it again, we have grown population. Those numbers you said, 100% agree with that. Northern Virginia lost 158,000 people to domestic net out migration over that time frame.
And
but
picked up even more, according to them. And picked up more.
Excuse me.
Senator Sasslaw.
So we lost 158,000 in net domestic out migration. You more than offset that with positive international out migration, but those are the Census Bureau facts. So I understand that. When we look at what the group is, when we look at adjusted gross income leaving because of taxpayers leaving, the average departing taxpayer has an average income of $110,000. So that we understand, and my guess is that a lot of those do come from Northern Virginia.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sasslaw.
If that's the case, how do you explain the increasing tax revenue that's been going up year after year in all the Northern Virginia municipalities?
Based upon property taxes in large part.
Based on what?
Property taxes in large part. Home values have gone up everywhere. That's the main driver, as I understand it.
But this
and sales taxes.
Yeah.
Senator
Mr.
Newman.
Chair? Oh,
Senator Newman. Yeah, Newman and then Vogel.
Okay. Always be. Mr. Secretary, thanks for coming today. I really had a couple questions. One, it was good news to see that inflation, we hope maybe have topped out, right? And I know you've talked about being conservative in your budget, but when it comes to inflation, do you feel comfortable on where you are on factoring in inflation numbers into the base? And, you know, and hopefully we've seen a cap of that or a topping of that, but how do you feel about your numbers as it relate to inflation?
Our 6-year plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, thank you. And actually, before I answer your question, I want to make one other point that I was reminded I need to say, because this is not what my history of in my private sector. I've been given feedback at times that I tend to focus on all the things we need to work on as opposed to things we really do well. I do want to say I am not a Virginia basher, okay? I think we have an amazing state. We have incredible natural resources to compete and win, but this data is troubling to me. It's the numbers don't lie, and it's validated information. And it's our view as an administration that we need to do something about it because the long-term implications are not good. So with respect to our projections, I appreciate that question. It's very important. We have a conservative outlook that really got us through the recession. Beyond that, our economist gave us their view of growth rates for the future years. We built into it inflation where appropriate. We actually built in 2% annual pay raises for state employees every year, because we tend to do that in chunks. Said, let's just put that in 2% per year. We also had DPB do calculations on the growth in education, the metrics that drive that, as well as our Medicare, our Medicaid, and other health services. So we think we built in provision for those things in our estimates to show that we can actually afford what we have proposed.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Newman.
So thank you for that. And I understand that a number of your numbers are coming from the Weldon Cooper Center, and I don't think we've ever questioned them in the past, and their numbers have been pretty clear and also pretty nonpartisan. My other question is, though, on your page 4, things are moving around, right? Those major revenues are moving around some, and it's interesting to watch those. But given all the changes, you have proposed the standard deduction change, the corporate tax change. We're still on track to hit that $3 billion and that $1 billion, even with these changes around for those tax relief, still look good, and looking into 2023 and 2024, still all fiscally balanced?
We show in our projection a 2.5 plus year-end excess revenues. And then we also have $1.1 billion of one-time things, which are the reversal of the super deposit, because we're over 15%, the $400 million taxpayer relief bucket, as well as the 250-ish of unspent appropriations last year that we believe were appropriately pulled back to be reallocated, those that were not automatically reappropriated to get to the one. So we feel good about the $3.6 billion.
Mr. Chairman, last item. If you want.
Senator Newman.
It's a frustration of mine. I think it's been a frustration of secretaries going back long before you that we do not do very good on dynamic estimation of what's happening, right? So when you reduce the corporate tax, you never account for more people coming in and more business growing and that type of thing. And I know that's a frustration. I don't know how we as Senate Finance figure it out. I don't know how you figure it out. But at some point, it seems to me, as we start to become more competitive with some of these rates and some of the activity with some of the mega sites, it can't always just be you reduce and nothing else comes in, right? I know it's not your fault, but it just seems to me that dynamic budgeting would be helpful. So.
We did not assume any impact from the tax cuts. I think there's ample evidence that in other states that have done this, that there is an impact. And actually, I failed to address another point of Senator Saslaw's question, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
With respect to the difference in average income levels for a family, a household, 100% agree with your numbers. If you look at the rates of change since 2013, that gap is closing because they're growing at 2x plus where we are. And that's, I understand people say, why do we compare to the states like that? They're all behind us in many metrics, but the gaps are closing because of the greatest rates of growth across all of these different measures. And I do think it's, I'm a competitive person, but I worry that from a finance standpoint, the ability for us over the longer haul to continue to fund the great things that are done here, we provide more public services here than those states do. To be able to do that, we need to grow to be able to grow the budget.
Right. All right, Senator Vogel and then Senator Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Senator Newman elicited from the Secretary what it is I was going to ask about, so I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right. Yeah. All right, are there any other questions anyone has or comments to make on this? Well, thank you very much for the presentation, and
Thank you very much.
And for having good numbers, you brought that with us to us today, so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we have 3 more bills to take up this morning. We can deal with Senator Deeds, 1287.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just do my bill from up here if that's okay. 1287 is similar to a bill I had last year, 298. 298's purpose was to add Charlottesville to the list of localities that could, by referendum, impose a 1% sales tax that would be limited in duration to basically finance the school construction. Charlottesville they have 9 school buildings, and of those school buildings, all but one are more than 45 years old. They've got a plan to build a new middle school, but financing has been a problem, and this would generate about $14 million a year for Charlottesville. Since then, Albemarle County, which surrounds Charlottesville, has asked for this authority. Albemarle County is an area where a lot of growth has occurred. A lot of pressure has been on the schools. They're constantly in the school construction business. This would generate about $23 million a year for Albemarle County. There are 9 localities, it's my understanding, have this authority. Pennsylvania County, I think, was the only one that rejected it, but they had a second referendum and they passed it. Mecklenburg County has not had their referendum yet. I don't think they have had their referendum to pass.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. Mecklenburg County has not had their referendum. So I think there's a bill to allow this to occur statewide, and I would certainly support that effort. But if that's not going to pass, I would think Charlottesville and Albemarle County ought to have this authority. I think some people from Charlottesville and Albemarle are online to testify, or they're supposed to be.
For those on Zoom who would like to testify, please raise your hand. We have several speakers, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Lloyd Shook, you may provide your testimony.
Thank you. Excuse me. I'm mayor of Charlottesville. We are, as was mentioned by Senator Deeds, we're in a real problem in trying to figure out how we're going to finance a number of school construction projects. Our choices, the choice of either we get $12 to $14 million from the sales tax, or we raise our property tax rate by about 14 cents. I think that for a lot of reasons, raising the sales tax is the preferable option to raising the real property tax rate. And I hope you will give us the authority to solve Charlottesville's financial problems with Charlottesville's own dollars, with Charlottesville voters' consent.
All right, thank you very much. Is there someone else to speak?
Donna Price, you may provide your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Senator Deeds, thank you for sponsoring this legislation. I'm Donna Price, Chair of the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors. Albemarle County is a dynamic and rapidly developing county with all of the demands for increased capacity that accompany such growth. We are asking for this authority because it provides an equitable tax based upon consumption patterns, not fixed assets or tax liabilities. It broadens the taxable population beyond our community. The people who come and visit Albemarle County will then be able to contribute to our most important workforce development tool, our public education, which ultimately supports their visits to our county. Albemarle County continues to look for opportunities to diversify the tax base beyond real estate property taxes, and this is our best opportunity. By way of example, over the last 20 years, Albemarle County has seen property taxes rise as a percentage of our general fund revenues from 55% to 70%. Obviously, there's a corresponding decline on all other revenue sources for our general fund, other local taxes, state and federal, other local revenue from 45% down to 30%. This is requiring us to put too many eggs in one basket and makes our financial stability more precarious and our reliance upon real estate values and decreases our financial base diversification. We have not been able to afford to build a new school in decades, those last 20 years, while we have expended substantial sums on reconstruction and expansion of schools, but we find that those schools are no longer suitable for such expansion. Our school needs are real. Albemarle County has recently approved a 5-year capital program of $153 million in school projects to include 2 new elementary schools, a new high school center, as well as several other renovations to existing schools. It's noteworthy, however, that $153 million is really only about half of the identified capital fund needs identified by our school board. We estimate that if we are given this authority, we could generate an additional $23 million annually solely towards school construction, and these additional revenues could be further leveraged by bond issuances. And as Senator Deeds mentioned, this still would require approval from our voters in a referendum. We ask that we be given this authority, and we would also ask that you consider expanding that authority to all municipalities in the Commonwealth. And I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you this morning.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to testify online?
We have no more, Mr. Chair.
All right, Senator Norman.
Mr. Chairman, on the tail end of her comments, I don't concur with uniformly extending this statewide. One of the things that I've been encouraged about historically is many of our localities for years and years waited for the state to provide revenues in certain areas that the localities wanted to develop. And I was encouraged when we, down in Hampton Roads in Northern Virginia, decided to stop waiting for the state and enact tax increases for highway improvements within our jurisdictions. And as some of you may recall, while I carried the legislation that created the Virginia Tourism Corporation, those localities that were based on tourism as their primary economic driver were not getting the resources to advertise and promote there. And so I carried legislation that I still hear about at home, the Tommy tax, but adding the 1% dedicated to marketing. And I cannot tell you the impact that it's had, but it took the historic triangle stopping from begging for money and engaging in self-help. So I think I'm encouraged to see localities that can afford it to coming forward and asking to increase the sales tax for specific areas. And I compliment Senator Deeds on this.
All right, Senator Vogel, do you have a comment? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Senator Marsden.
Thank you. Just a question for staff. I'm just curious if they raise more money than they need to service the debt for all of their projects, does the remaining money have to go cash into the project? So is that the way this works? Because if you cut if you raise the tax 1%, you're probably going to raise a little more or a little less than you need. What do you do if there's an excess? Does it get put into the project?
Senator Barker, Senator Marsden, I believe the language of the bill and the current law requires it to be used for school construction or major renovation of public schools. However, the OAG issued an opinion back in December of 2021 that the additional local sales tax revenue cannot be used for debt mitigation on prior projects, so it can only be for projects going forward.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've consistently voted against this approach, and I want to just briefly explain why we'll continue to do that. If we had on the table a measure that would increase the state sales tax to 6% and put the additional revenue through an appropriate formula of local ability to pay and distribute it back to localities, I'd vote for it. But this, particularly if we run it full circle to all the localities, will just increase disparities around the state because that's why we have the SOQ and the composite index to create a better opportunity for these localities that don't have the revenue base. So that's why I think we need more money back to the local governments to decrease the burden, particularly on real estate, local property taxes statewide. But this formula, if it runs full circle, will just increase disparities around the state.
All
Mr.
right.
Chair.
Yes, Senator Deeds.
Mr. Chair, I certainly understand where Senator Henger's coming from. There are some localities in the Commonwealth that don't have the ability to raise significant money to fund school construction. Even if we gave places like Craig County or Giles County or Bland County or Cumberland County or Highland or Bath, we gave them the ability to raise their tax 1 point, it wouldn't raise enough money to fund bonds. But this is the method that has passed the General Assembly. We've given this authority to 9 localities. These are 2 localities that can raise significant money through the sales tax and have indicated their interest in making sure they invest in schools to provide for their children. And I'd certainly ask the committee to give these localities the same courtesy we've given these other 9 localities.
All right. If there is no other one wishing to comment or question, is there a motion? All right, we have a motion and a second to report.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
Ayes 14, noes 1, the motion passes. All right, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have Senate Bill 1408, which is very similar to the bill we just heard, except it grants all localities and not just the 9 that currently have it and the 2 that we have just added. It gives all localities the ability to adopt an up to 1% sales tax solely to pay for school construction and major renovations by referendum. This is a recommendation of the Commission on School Construction and Modernization, which I chair and which was created in 2020. This is one of our top priorities because we did a survey of all of the schools' construction needs across the Commonwealth. Over 50% of the schools in the Commonwealth are over 50 years old. A significant number of those schools are over 100 years old, including the elementary school that my children attend that burned down a year ago and is under a major renovation right now. The total cost to replace those school buildings, we calculate it to be $25 billion. While we made a significant impact with the school construction fund and the 1.2, I believe, billion dollars that we provided last year, 1.2 is a drop in the bucket for the needs. Many of the schools that were constructed, you'll see the plaque inside. They were constructed during the New Deal when the federal government made significant investments in school construction. Another round of them were built in the 50s, the last time the state made a significant investment in school construction. The governor, over the past year, said that school construction is a local responsibility, but many of our localities don't have the tools that they need to meet their infrastructure needs. This will give them a tool in their toolbox to do that if they want it, and will help generate a significant amount of money. And rather than having school divisions come one at a time, as Prince Edward County did as well last year, and have to have a supermajority because it's special legislation, having a supermajority of the General Assembly decide, we should give our localities the ability to meet their responsibility to their students, to have them learn in schools that are not literally falling apart and burning down. And I know there are a number of people who want to speak on behalf of this bill.
All right. Anyone wish to present testimony?
Good
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Jeremy Bennett, representing the Virginia Association of Counties. I want to thank Senator McClellan for her leadership on this issue with the Commission on Construction Modernization, as well as this committee and the General Assembly for the major investment of $1.25 billion last year. As the Senator stated, this is a much larger issue of $25 billion. This approach to addressing school construction is currently working in 8 localities. This would just empower the remaining cities and counties throughout the Commonwealth. If it's a good fit for them, like it might be in Charlottesville or Admiral County, to move forward. And certainly it's only done with the consent of the local governing body and the citizens of that locality. So for those reasons, again, thank the Senator, and we strongly support this bill.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Kathy Bircher, representing Norfolk City Public Schools. This is a key legislative priority for the schools in Norfolk. Norfolk has among the oldest facilities in the Commonwealth, with Maury High School in continual use since 1911. Again, Norfolk is looking for additional ways to support the critically needed renovation and building projects. Again, we are very grateful to both the Commission on School Construction and Modernization and Senator McClellan for bringing this legislation, and Norfolk Schools strongly supports it.
All right. Next.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Josette Bolivan. I'm with the Virginia Municipal League. I thank the Senator for bringing this forward again. VML strongly supports SB 1408, which expands local government authority to raise dedicated funds with the approval of the community by referendum solely to be used for school construction and renovation. We greatly appreciate all that was done last session to help schools. However, there still is more to be done, as was stated. Currently, 9 communities have this opportunity, with 3 more asking for this authority this session. We are just asking for this expansion statewide to help localities in any way possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Morning, I'm Don Robertson with Isle of Wight County. We are here to certainly lend our support for this bill. We appreciate what Senator McClellan is attempting to do. Certainly Senator Norman and Senator Lucas have worked on our behalf in the past. And we are, again, certainly in support of this bill. We feel like the goalpost tends to move on this item. Sometimes, we've come in the past with senators providing bills specific to Isle of Wight, only to be told if it were a statewide issue, we'd consider that. This is a statewide issue, and certainly we are in support and hope that you will be in support as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chad Stewart with the Virginia Education Association. We concur with all the points brought up by the other speakers, and we would also note that research is conclusive on the fact that conditions of school environments and infrastructure strongly affect achievement and outcomes. This is a student achievement issue as much as a tax issue, and we implore you to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Smith, Superintendent's Association. Not much more I can add. We appreciate the patron and appreciate the effort and are in support. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? All right. Is there a motion, Senator Peterson?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion report. I'm going to give a little bit of a preface. Years ago, when I was a young lad running for the House of Delegates, this was actually a major issue in our community to raise money for school construction. And I hope we're at the point now we've reached a consensus that localities that choose to do this should have that option. In Fairfax County, believe it or not, we've had a school construction crisis for generations. I mean, with people growing up in trailers and being educated in trailers, and a lot of it was we just didn't have the ability to set money aside for school construction in the way that we could have. And I just feel like this is a way that it's a method of self-help. So having done that, I've moved to report the bill.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We vote on the board now.
Ayes 13, noes 3.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you. All right, Senator Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an administration bill dealing with bonds. The code requires the governor to propose a plan to let people know when general funds at any level would be used for capital outlay. It's a kind of, in my opinion, a silly law that he has to follow because we don't have to follow the plan. It can be changed, it can be added to, it could be subtracted from, but nevertheless, it's required that he submit such a plan. So I did put in the bill, and I would ask Tyler to give the details.
Senator Barker, Senator Howell, yes, this is the capital outlay plan establishing the plan. It repeals last year's plan and then includes 29 projects that have been authorized for planning, pre-planning, included for planning in the governor's budget or represent future commitments of the Commonwealth.
All right, does anyone wish to speak to this? Welcome back, so.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Nice to be with you.
Yeah.
Just real quickly, Co-Chair Howell explained the bill as it is. This is a requirement and statute that the governor submit a 6-year capital outlay plan, and that is this bill. And of course, the administration supports it. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Anybody have any comments or questions?
Anyone on Zoom who would like to testify, you may raise your hand. We have no speakers.
You have what?
We have no speakers
No
on
speakers.
Zoom, Madam.
Okay, all right. All right, if there's nothing, nobody has any questions or comments further, we can take a motion.
Move to report, sir.
All right, a motion and a second to report. We will vote on the board now.
Ayes 16, no 0.
All right, the motion passes. And is there anything else to come before the committee? All right, we are adjourned. Tommy.